Talking about standard 3 learning environments, collaboration.
Okay.
You started it? Okay.
Yeah.
So this week the lesson I just watched was, I think you're focusing this week, or what we're going to talk about anyway, because of course you focus on all these standards every week, but the standard 3, the learning environment, basically collaboration is what I'm going to look at here. The kind of lesson you taught, and even though in this lesson it was about revising and teaching kids about revising and what they're looking for as they're revising, so that's the individual skill set, but in that process you were also teaching kids how to use partners to work with one another to revise their work. So you had both the content, which was the specific things they were going to look at, the voice and I wrote it down here, what they were going to look at, the clarity and the meaning as writers, and then also how to be partners together. So that's where you would get into the real standard 3, the collaborative work part. I thought it went well. We talked a little. You still, I know you're still working on shortening the lessons. It was still the main lesson part was still a little too long, probably. But I know you're working on that. I think that I like that you had the students now come up and read your writing. I probably would have read it myself, even though I know he said he could read it. But that didn't take up that much time. My question to you is this: did you already have certain things that you knew? Like, were there certain things that you knew somebody would pick up on, or did the like when he picked up the cake and the gift, were those surprises to you, or were you just writing this?
I let him do it.
So,
yeah.
So now So what if there had been something? What if he had said everything was okay? Like you hadn't put a. I guess what I'm asking is, sometimes when I do modeling like that, I make sure that there's something that somebody's going to find. Some kind of glaring piece of information, and his was the cake, of course. Maybe one an ice cream cake, actually. So I'm just that's something to think of, to make sure that. Chances are there's going to be something they find, but sometimes they might find something that you don't want to change because it's going to lead. It's another part of your story that you're going to teach something else later on that requires that.
Yeah.
So I think it's good sometimes to have something that when you're writing it, so like I'm going to leave some big glaring thing out, that has come up later, or whatever, something like that. Just a thought.
That's good. Thank you.
Now, my other question was when we did the video where the kids were working in their partnerships, were the students writing on each other's papers?
Yeah.
Okay. And what are your thoughts about that?
Well, I wanted them to do both. So similar to what we did, where you could highlight or mark what was it, and then the writer would correct it or add on whatever the recommendation was.
Right.
Just so they would both be interacting on the same work at the same time.
Yep.
Because I felt that if I didn't do it that way, they would not. A lot of times don't. They're like, oh yeah, it's great. Go, I read it. It's fine. It's perfect. So I really wanted to see that they were working, like physically writing and working on
exactly.
it. So that's what.
No, I totally agree with that. The one thing that I would think is, I know I am still even when I work with students in their writing, I don't write on their papers because it's their writing,
either,
and so one thing I might recommend on that is have the kids use Post-its.
Okay.
Have the kids they're giving advice write their suggestions on the Post-it, because you also want to teach the kids, and you will eventually. You wouldn't do it in this lesson, that they're helping each other, but at the same time they're still the writer. So if they decide that there's a reason they didn't want that particular change made, they don't have to make it then, and that's another conversation with you. Oh, thank you for here's what I'm thinking as the writer, though. This is why I'm not going to make that change, blah, blah, blah. So just something to think about along those lines.
Because then the next time, for the next writing, editing, I could add that aspect to it.
Yeah. And I think and they love the Post-its, and I think, and that way it's always just the same kid, the student who's writing it is writing on their paper.
Yeah, and it's true. I never write on their paper.
No, even I used to write I would give my notes sometimes on Post-its to the kids, on their paper. And when I taught kindergarten, and we hung it in the hallway, and it was just it was inventive spelling, and everything. I would scribe the story. The student would tell me what was on each page, and then I would stick it there. Now my thing was, not everybody can read kindergarten writing, only special people can read kindergarten writing. So I think it's just something, and that way, and you should feel free to tell them, because I used to do this with my first graders. because you do have those kids who, no matter what you do, they're going to be like, no, everything's great. And I would say, no matter how I've read, I always give an example. Like my favorite book is To Kill a Mockingbird, and I read it once every year. I read that book, and I said, even though it's my favorite book, and I've read it once every year since I was in high school, there's I find something new every year that I would like. Wow, I wish she would have told me more about this, or I wish she would have said something more about that. And I said, it's my favorite book, and it's a great book, and it's a world. So I'm like, I want you to at least find 2 suggestions to give to your partner, or whatever, 2 or 3.
Yeah, so that's a good question I had, because do I set a limit? How does that work when you want to make them?
I never set a limit because I found that I didn't have to, although I felt like some of your kids in there today, they all wanted to be your partner and help change your story. They all had bits and pieces.
It was a lot.
It was funny. But I never had to set limits, but if you might have, if you have, and you're going to know those, and that might not be something I do class whole group, but if you have those kids that you know how they can be, and you have a couple kids in those classes that you have that are just going to give the other kid like a list, everything's going to be wrong. That you might pull those kids aside, maybe it's a small group. Hey, I'm going to show you how to be a really great writing partner or whatever, and here's some suggestions. It's always great to give advice, but you'll know how to do that.
Okay, I just wasn't sure if there was like a right way to.
Well, I think you kind of teach into like it's still their story, and maybe what I'm asking you to, if it's clarity and meaning. If you understand it and it's clear, but you just would like it changed. If it says red car and you think the car should be blue, that's not a suggestion that you make, right? Because it's clear and you know what I mean. Those kinds of things. Because you have a couple, especially a couple of those girls in that class that always are wanting like, well, yeah, that's a really great thing, but I think it'd be really better. Yeah.
Okay,
and you
so
know
I
who
can
they are already.
choose for the conference. That's good for the conferencing. I can divide them, and with the ones that I know are going to think everything is great, and the ones that
you can always the partnerships and the grouping is you can always use that to feed whatever it is like the ones who are going to work well together and the ones who aren't, or the ones who are going to challenge each other in a way that pushes their writing forward. And that's up to you. I mean, there are times I let the kids find their. Actually, I always had a writing partner and a reading partner. They didn't stay the same the whole year, but I was the one who always chose them.
Oh yeah, I do too.
And so
they've always. Yeah.
But when you're looking at this, you might have certain students who are really good at giving really good feedback, and so you might want that everybody has a chance
to be with
them, so they kind of get a good example and a model of like, oh, this is what they're saying. Just if you have those kids, you may not have those kids that are super.
I have some that are very attention to detail.
Yeah.
So they could help the ones that are really not that kids.
And the ones who can really, there's some kids who are really a lot stronger at carrying the story through.
Yeah.
So if something happens on page 3 that doesn't make sense from page 1, they catch it. Where, like you said, the attention to detail. With the other kids, are just like, oh yeah, and you're like,
great.
The story ended with the bunny being the superhero. There's no bunny in the story all the way through. It's a cat. And then like, oh yeah, I meant cat. So it's that kind of thing or whatever. But other than that, I thought I like that. He was really happy to get up and help, and I think that gave a good example of. I think it gave a good model for collaboration. Now you can even take your modeling further next time and actually have the conversation, because you turned back to the class, which was fine, to say, look what he just did. But maybe you could show them what the conversation. This is the kind of conversation that I would have with my partner then. Like, oh wow, what's unclear about that?
I think
and you kind of did it as he was going through. But maybe to show them it could be a slower
because next time I'm going to do it in the writing paper. Because this is a story from before.
Yeah.
So next time, because we do it in the writing paper, I thought maybe we can sit down as partners.
Yeah.
And also to make it more concise, because it really was too.
Yeah, you can fishbowl it. Where everybody's like.
I haven't heard that word since my master's.
I find that a lot of the modeling, especially when you're doing it with a partner, is basically fishbowl.
Yeah.
But you want everybody to see. But that way they can hear your conversation. Because you had the same kind of conversation you would have had, but you had it with the whole group and him. Like, look what he did. Because
to keep them engaged.
And so if you, it may be a way to make it even more like kind of clear for them is like the two of you are talking and you're like, why do you want me to change cake? What is unclear about that? And he was like, I don't know what kind of cake it is. And you're like, well, is that and then you could even, at some point, if you felt that this is where your lessons were going, that could be, well, is that important to the story? Is the kind of cake it is important to this story? And that's not where they are yet, but they might.
No, but it's also modeling, asking, asking questions, which we're also doing in reading. Like, oh, well, I actually don't agree with you.
Right,
so, yeah.
right. Because right now they're just learning about clarity and meaning in general. Like, does it make sense and do you understand the meaning?
Mm-hmm.
But at some point, it's just like, well, not everything that doesn't make sense is important to the story, or maybe it does. Yeah, yeah. So, but they're not there yet, but I can see them getting there. Yeah.
Okay. That's good. Thank you. That's really good feedback.
No, sure.
I was going to ask something else.
The kids work well together. I mean, it's obvious, and I know this because I'm in your classroom and I see them when they're working. Actually, I used your class as an example today when I was having a department meeting with another department and talking to them about what, and and this is probably going to be too long and be edited, but they were talking about how if two teachers are working in the same room, it's going to be too loud. And I said, well, and I said, why don't you visit Maria's classroom, because you can see that there can be several groups working. The teacher's not with all those groups because she can't be, and it works. I said, but it's taught. I said people have been taught that since the beginning of the year, because you have to teach kids what kind of voice they speak to when they're working in a group and what kind of actions they can do. They can't just get up and leave the classroom. And I said, but once you teach it, then you can. I said, you'll go into Maria's class and you'll see her assistant teaching a group of kids on one side, and she's with an individual kid reading or writing on the other side, and the other kids are in their groups doing their work. And I said, it can happen, but it has to be taught. So. Mm-hmm. So I thought I would just share that with you.
Thank you.
Use your class as an example of coming to see how kids can collaborate and still maintain order in a classroom without teachers.
You have to constantly remind them.
You do.
Thank you for noticing that, because I think we work really hard to try to
it's very evident.
Okay.